Scott Taverico.
All right, call this.
His grandson.
You gotta are you recording it?
We're good.
Okay, call this work session to order Thursday, January 15th, 2026. We have a quorum, I see. And do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I second that.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, visitor communication. This is the time provided for individuals wishing to address the Planning Commission regarding issues not already on the agenda.
I think you skipped me, Art.
Oh, I always do that. I think I do that on purpose.
I think you did. It's okay, either way.
Okay, Michael, sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Liaison comments first.
Yeah. Well, happy 2026, everybody. We really haven't gotten going this year. This is, the first PC meeting of the year. And we had City Council last night, and I was not there because I wasn't feeling good. So you're my first official meeting of the year tonight. And I really don't have a lot to tell you, although we did rescind the resolution for the UGB application. We did that for procedural reasons. It wasn't a land use action, so we pulled that yesterday just to keep going with the application process as we had already planned to do. So that did happen last night. And there wasn't a whole lot else going on last night other than we solidified our calendar about which meetings we were going to have this next calendar year. So I don't have a lot for you other than don't get sick, because the flu that's going around right now is really bad. And I had it very, very bad last week. So I'm not 100% yet, but I'm at least 80 or 90%.
Did she show up last night for the Tiny Homes on Wheels?
Yes, she did present last night, and there was two other small home manufacturer type people that were with her. So there was 3 parties involved in that discussion. And I'm really glad that she came here and got some encouragement from us as a group to do that in front of City Council. I do believe that they're going to show up again at the City goal setting open house next week, which is Thursday next week, I think. And they're going to really try and push the envelope to encourage City Council to add that kind of stuff to our goal setting so we can maybe get something done in the next fiscal year. That would be great. I'm supportive of that effort, so myself. So I will be bringing that up as well. And gauging from our meeting last month, it seems like we're all kind of interested to having as many options as possible for different types of housing, right? Is that fair enough to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
So thanks for that. And I think that this is just another example of how the community can work together to push forward common ideas that seem to have good ground underneath them for housing. So other than that, I'm available for questions if you have any. If not, I'll let you guys move on with your meeting, and I'm going to get on out of your hair. So.
All right, thank you. Anybody else questions?
Rick, did you raise your hand?
No.
Oh, you were just saluting me. That's
Sayonara.
not the salute I usually get. I usually get the single finger salute is what I get. Yeah, I know. So very good. Well, you guys have a great meeting. I'm looking forward to working with you this last year of mine on council here. So I'll be doing this one more year for sure. And let's keep going, huh? Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Okay, now visitor communication. This is the time provided for individuals wishing to address the Planning Commission regarding issues not already on the agenda. Anyone in the audience? No? Online? No. Okay. Approval of the minutes? None. On to the workshop.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome, everybody, to the first meeting of 2026. Happy New Year to you all. Just wanted to note that we are not doing the election of officers or election of chair and vice chair this time around. The resolution actually calls for it to be done every 2 years. So this year we won't be doing that. So save up your votes for next year and your lobbying for certain positions. So we wanted to take advantage of the fact that we don't really have any formal actions for you guys to consider this meeting, but we really, in the interim, have wanted to maintain some consistency and some continuity and take advantage of the time to hold a meeting so that we can pursue some educational opportunities and talk about some things we've done in the past and things that we're be looking forward to in 2026. So hopefully this is working out for you. We'll have some, trust me, we'll have some meteor projects coming your way down the line. But it has been a little, I think our last public hearing was about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, with some code amendments that we did. But we have a presentation for you today that Matt, Martin, and Sarah Val are all going to participate in. And we encourage you guys to, we don't want to just be up here just boring you to death and preaching to you. And we would like this to be interactive. And so please feel free to cut in any time with questions. So I'm going to start off with just a little bit of a look back at 2025, just to take a look at all the things that we accomplished as a group, you guys accomplished as a commission. We had 13 total meetings. 11 of those were workshops, 2 public hearings, so that's a little quieter on the public hearing side than it's been since I've been here. I think that may be an indication of the economic climate right now and the fact that we're starting to get a little bit more built out in our community, and there's not as many development sites out there, greenfield sites that would bring forth master plans or things, subdivisions, larger subdivisions that would be subject to planning commission review. So we've been doing a lot more workshops, but we did accomplish some code amendments last year. We increased the tree fines for unauthorized tree removal. We amended the public facility district to add community health centers to the allowed uses, and that has since been taken advantage of. We also implemented new defensible space standards for new development that you participated in, and we've had a few examples. Those apply to new development, including building permits in certain situations outside of master plans. So we've had a few submittals that have actually had to start implementing that, and they'll kind of tell us how they plan to meet those criteria, and then as it goes on and as they get done with development and look for occupancy, that's when we would verify that they did what they were supposed to do. We had one public hearing for land use, and that was a variance that we did for a setback variance that was successful. And then you also participated in 3 workshops with the urban growth boundary amendment. That doesn't count the ones that occurred in 2024. So I think a total of 6 altogether. But those were intensive workshops, and valuable input to the process was provided by the Planning Commission. In addition to several planning commissioners participating on our UGB steering committee, Chair, you did, as well as Commissioner Retzman. So appreciate that participation. We'll look for, I'm sorry. Well, you started out somewhere then before you got to the Planning Commission, right? I got you at a technicality there. No? Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. And then did some great education opportunities where we had our transportation engineer, contract engineer, come in, and as well as our public works operations manager, give you guys some tutorials on transportation and utilities, which seemed like you guys found useful. And then we started some tutorials on the development code that we're going to continue on today. So good job, everyone. Some good accomplishments in 2025. All right. So what do we got forecast for 2026? Your informal involvement with the UGB has ended, and now with the next step in the process of going for formal adoption of the UGB with a plan amendment to our comprehensive plan that we are planning to submit here to ourselves. It's kind of weird, but that will be submitted in late January and going to go through a process, and then it'll go to public hearings. You guys are a recommending body in that situation. That you'll make a recommendation to council. So we'll have public hearings sometime in the summer, I anticipate.
Do you continue along even though there's an appeal? Sorry, hold it down. Do we continue along even though there's an appeal?
We continue along in an appeal until our attorney tells us not to, or somebody tells us not to. But we're with what the counselor was talking about last night with the motion to rescind the resolution that directed staff to go forward with the comprehensive plan amendments. We're hoping that that will stop the appeal process. There's no guarantee. There's possibility of appealing the rescinding of a resolution as well. But for my purposes, I'm going forward with the applications. I don't see at this point.
How does the rescinding keep us going forward? It sounds counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? So what the petitioner had claimed is, well, we don't know what the grounds for their appeal was, but in the state of Oregon, you can appeal land use decisions. And this, in our minds, was not a land use decision because it didn't have any criteria. It was more of a symbolic kind of direction that council was providing staff to go forward with this application. We still don't have an adopted UGB. All it means is that council was comfortable going to the next step. Okay. And rather than fighting that and spending time and money at the Land Use Board of Appeals arguing that it's not a land use decision, we decided that we didn't need that, so let's just rescind it. It doesn't make any change in terms of the direction or of what the steering committee was and what the planning commission and basically what the council said. Still going forward with concept AA, but trying to not circumvent or but try to take out some of the grounds for the appeal, I guess.
But eventually it becomes a land use decision.
Eventually.
And then they could.
That would be the time that
appeal.
would normally an appeal would occur is after that decision.
Okay, just wanted to understand that a little bit.
But they've made it clear that they may appeal the rescinding of the resolution as well, so it can still get caught up in appeals. So I know it's confusing, but that's where we're at now, and stay tuned. Let's see where we're. So that will be coming forward to you. We'll also be simultaneously making a submittal to the county for the same thing. But along the way, we'll plan to start discussions about the area planning process. That is a requirement that we need to go through to. It's kind of the next layer of detail for the expansion area where we'll start applying kind of the bones of how development would occur out there, comprehensive plan designations, those kinds of things, where they would specifically go. And that'll be a public involvement process and will involve the planning commission. That's something that you would also recommend when it gets to the point of adoption. And then we're going to take this opportunities. We always try to take the opportunities when we have lull in development activity to process code amendments that have sometimes been stacking up that we just haven't had time to get to because we've been faced with other deadlines. I think I mentioned this to you last time, the code audit project, which we've engaged with 3J Consulting and another consultant who does code audits all over the state of Oregon to kind of comb through our code and see where we're out of compliance with state law and also come up with suggestions of things we don't have to necessarily have to change, but we might want to consider changing where it comes to like housing, the provision of housing and obstacles to providing housing. So that'll be a really interesting process. The Planning Commission will be heavily involved with that. I see that as a major work item for this year. Maybe what we'll try to do before that is sneak in some housekeeping amendments, and those are less substantive changes, but things that need to be tweaked in our code that aren't really policy changes. And so we will be likely coming forward to you with those maybe in the spring sometime. We also, the design standards was a council goal to take a look at updating some of the design standards in our code. Most likely we'll just wrap that up into the overall code audit. And then the floodplain, special floodplain hazard area, has been lingering out there. I think we've mentioned this in the past. These are FEMA requirements based on lawsuits from the Audubon Society. It's kind of been in a holding pattern. FEMA hasn't provided any direction on it lately. So we're in a holding pattern there. And then we just don't know if there will be some Type 3 applications coming forward. We continue to have pre-development, pre-application reviews with projects that could come to the Planning Commission, but just as of now haven't followed up with an actual application.
I've got kind of an off-the-wall question.
Sure.
Just popped into my head while we're looking at this. If you wanted to do a code audit, is there a way to use AI to feed everything through and have it look for contradictory statements through our code and things like that? Has anybody ever tried anything like that yet?
I'm sure they're working on it.
Maybe they have it. Maybe they do it. I guess I don't know.
It's probably somebody working on it. I speak for myself. I haven't seen it yet, but I can imagine it's on the way. Things like being able to do that kind of stuff is just a matter of time.
Yeah, because then it would just pop out and there'd be 10 pages of here's where you have things that contradict each other.
Yeah. There's been some talk about
Or other things.
There's companies out there that are offering interfaces with the community where you can use AI to quicker searches or searches, whether when it's off hours you can't get a staff member or whatever, that you can more easily research, like can I do a fence? If I do a fence, how tall can it be? Those kinds of things.
That would be
you just plug
fantastic.
that kind of information in and get the response back very quickly. We looked at a beta example of that, and we just felt like it wasn't quite far enough along yet. But that might be something that we consider down the road.
Okay, thank you.
And then we'll try to schedule, we will try, I guess, it's up to the council, but I'm sure they'd be supportive of this, a joint meeting where there isn't maybe a heavy topic like the UGB on there, that we could have more of a free-flow conversation with them and vice versa. So we'll look to schedule that.
It'd be nice to do that early on so we can kind of understand where their headspace is around all of this. So we, because their day direct does kind of, we advise them.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, maybe after they've got their goal setting process coming up, which maybe after they get done with that would be a great, or maybe perhaps before they settle that, because I think it'd be valuable for them to hear what your guys' thoughts are as well. So, yeah. And then we'll take continued opportunities if we don't have anything on specifically, required public hearings. We'll continue to meet at least once a month, and we'll continue to provide some topics of interest. If you have any that you think of, please let us know. We can talk to the code until we're blue in the face if you want, which we're going to do here in a second. No, hopefully it'll be interesting. Let us know if it's not. Well, we'll know if it's not, I guess, by the yeah, if your head hits the table. So with that, we'll go into that development code primer. We started with it in November. We covered quite a few topics, and we're going to talk about 3 specific parts of the code today, and we're going to give Sarah the lead-off position here to take it away.
All right.
Start us off.
Good evening. you hear me okay, Carol? Perfect. Okay, so I am going to cover land divisions, which is chapter 4.3 in the Sisters Development Code. There's two different types of land divisions. There are partitions and then there are subdivisions. Partitions create 3 or fewer parcels. So in the example above there, I've got one piece of land and they're dividing it in half essentially. And then a subdivision creates 4 or more lots. So the example there, you're creating 8, including those open tracts. Just a side note that Matt will get to talk about later, and Scott, that's a cottage development. And then one of the primary differences in between partitions and subdivisions from the viewpoint of the Planning Commission is that partitions are a type 2 review, so they don't often come before you in a public hearing, but subdivisions are a type 3 and they always come before you. And subdivisions, just one more difference. No, you're good. You can go on. I was going to say one more difference in between partitions and subdivisions is that subdivisions tend to involve larger pieces of land. They involve the creation of streets, so they're more complex than a partition typically is. Now we're good. All right, so our land division process is what we call a 2-step process. So you will submit for a partition or a subdivision application. It gets reviewed by staff through some criteria that we're going to go through in just a second. Conditions of approval are created. The applicant then goes and completes those conditions of approval, and then they have to come back in with another application called a final plat. And staff will ensure that all of the conditions were met and that no major changes have been made. And then a lot of entities, including Scott and then Jackson and Public Works, sign the final plat, and it goes over to Deschutes County for recording. And then it's final. Yeah. Yes, for both applications, you need a burden of proof for both the preliminary or the partition subdivision and the final plat.
And that burden of proof for the benefit of the group is where the applicant shows how they meet all the criteria. So it's not only you submit the drawings, but also supporting documents and this narrative or burden of proof document that addresses each one of the applicable criteria. It's like a 30-page. It can be. Mm-hmm. And it's show your work, right? And then how you've clearly addressed each one of those applicable criteria that you see in any of our staff reports, and ultimately your decisions are it's the precursor to those final decisions.
Yeah. So a burden of proof, and then we take it in, we review that burden of proof, and then we essentially rewrite it almost. So we do the same thing, we turn it around, and we're going to look at preliminary approval criteria, which involves circulation, access, streets, utilities, drainage, and easements, and underlying zone compliance. And those things always feed into approval. But over on the side here, we've got infill development regulations and then replats and vacations. Those are alternative options that may apply in some scenarios, but they don't always.
And that underlying zone, we touched on it last time when we discussed the other chapters of the code. We're looking at residential district, multifamily, commercial, industrial, what the minimum lot size is, the allowed uses, etc. So that's where we're kind of that interface of this chapter with the other applicable. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys know what a vacation is?
No. We're going to talk about it.
Oh, not yet?
Not yet.
You have to hold.
It's a
You
secret.
have to hold for that.
3 more minutes of secret.
I hope you do by the end of this conversation.
Oh, I see. You still got to go through all these.
We got to get through. We got to get through
Sorry,
the
I jumped
approval
the gun.
criteria. No, I mean.
Now they're thinking about vacation.
I know. So circulation, access, and streets. We are looking at the city's transportation system plan and making sure that any streets that are supposed to be in place are in place and they're of an adequate size. We're looking for sidewalks. If they're supposed to be there, they need to be installed. Bike lanes, those sort of things. We also look at parking lot dimensions. So are your parking spaces big enough? Do you have enough of them? Drive aisles, and making sure that you have access to the site in general. So can you get in there? We don't want to create a partition or a subdivision where we landlock something, essentially.
Typically at this point, somebody would come in with a civil engineer.
Yeah.
And who would do the drawings and make sure that all of the criteria are,
Yeah, more showing your work on the plans even. Yeah, they'll put dimensions on there for us so we don't have to measure everything, which is nice. Okay.
Where you also would talk about keeping all the stormwater on site?
That is part of it, yeah. I was going to talk about it on the next slide, so thank you.
Just want
Great
to note
transition.
also before we leave that access and streets, there are very specific standards for where driveways can take access to particular streets. There's access spacing, but also street alignment and street spacing as well. So there's a method to the orientation and the layout of streets and those driveways. That's right.
Order of streets, right? So
Right.
Major street and minor.
That's right.
I don't know
So-
what the terms are.
Yeah, so where you'll see, it's arterials, collectors, local streets, and kind of that's the hierarchy. So with subdivisions, you'll see new driveways or those individual property accesses within subdivisions instead of along those highways or those arterials. So instead of a number of street connections or driveways, they're all internal to both reduce those conflicts with those higher order streets, but also funnel those impacts within the development itself.
Perfect. So storm drainage is very important. We want to prevent erosion. We want to prevent flooding. So a lot of times you'll see the necessary creation of swales or another measure in order to contain that storm water. You'll also see that utilities are always required for new properties, so you have to have water and sewer. And if those things abut or are along a right-of-way, you often have to create easements. That way public and private entities can get in there to service that if they need to, if we needed to get in there to check a water meter, that sort of thing.
When you look at stormwater, are you looking at like a 50-year flood or a 100-year or?
That is a great question. I don't know.
Because you don't have any overflow you don't have a stormwater system here, so.
Question?
It's where we get the engineers involved. They start doing the math. It depends on your overall, your paved surfaces, your hardscapes, and the amount of capacity for that flow, and then the corresponding catch basins or other drainage facilities to capture that rainwater. So it's the math on your overall again impervious surfaces and how to capture it on site.
The goal is to not increase the amount of drainage off your site than you would have had without the development. So you can't put the burden on the downstream properties of where you are. So, but yeah, we have our city engineer reviews all development requests, and so we know basically what's going on. We know a lot about it, but they're the experts and provide the real expert comments that they have to implement. So we're thankful for them.
Very. Okay, next slide, if you will. So underlying zone compliance, so like Matt was mentioning, this is multifamily residential district or residential district, industrial district. Each one of those zones has certain requirements for how big lots have to be, depending on the development that's going in, also how wide they have to be, how deep they have to be, and all that good stuff. Setbacks, yeah. So if there was a property that was dividing and the house was staying on there, we have to make sure that the setbacks are still met when you introduce that division. Absolutely. Okay. Infill development regulations are particular to flag lots and then driveway courts, and they're a really good way to add housing units in areas where development's already done. You'll typically see them on lots that are unusually deep, so there's a lot of area in the backyard that isn't being used. You'll create a flag lot partition so you can add more units. A driveway court I haven't seen in person, but it's essentially the driveway kind of functions like a street, and it allows it to access multiple properties around there. And vacations. So vacations are essentially voiding the thing you did or undoing it, but you can also have vacations of right-of-way. So if that right-of-way is no longer needed, you can vacate it through the city.
We're not going to Mexico.
No, we're not. We're staying right here.
For instance, the street next to the library used to connect all the way to the highway, the original plat, but it was vacated at one time. So they didn't, when they decide they don't need streets, they somebody can petition to have them vacated, in which half of it goes to the property owner to one side, and the other half goes to the other side. So they're rare, but they do happen from time to time. So, or vacation of a right or an easement that's not necessary where there's no utility in there.
Absolutely. Okay, and then the other thing Chapter 4.3 covers are lot line adjustments, and there are two kinds of those also. So there's a lot line consolidation, which combines properties together, and then there's a lot line adjustment, which moves a property boundary in between two lots. So in the example above, you've got the red line was the original property line right up against that house, and they elected to do an adjustment of 5 feet. So making lot 6 larger, making lot 5 smaller. These Planning Commission typically doesn't see. They are a type 1 review, but you would still get notice of the decision by email. And this is the approval criteria for lot line adjustments and consolidations. It's similar to partitions and subdivisions, not nearly as complicated or involved. The main thing is that we want to make sure that we are only dealing with existing properties. So you wouldn't want to do a lot line adjustment between 2 properties and somehow end up with 3 properties, because that's actually a partition. So that's one of the big things to look for. Also, utilities and easements. Do we need to create any easements? Do utilities need to be moved around? That way they match up with the lots, and then making sure everything is great with, lot size still, setbacks, that sort of stuff, and access. And then my last point on this slide is nonconformance. If you had a situation like we saw in the last slide where the property line was right up against the house and the setback is already not met, we couldn't move that property line and make that situation worse. We can make it better, but we can't make it worse.
We could maintain it.
Or we can maintain it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So it's grandfathered in because of the setback.
Yes.
If it was legal to begin with, like if it was built before zoning, it had to have been legal at one time when then the code got changed and made it illegal.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's a legal non-conforming, is what we call it.
Perfect. And I'm going to hand it over to Matt. He's going to talk about master plans.
Yeah, so we're talking master plans, chapter 4.5 of the development code. These are for your larger acreage, larger projects where we're looking at the development on a holistic scale instead of smaller 3-lot partitions or smaller subdivisions. Because of it's a larger area, we want to make sure that there's some continuity, the layout is appropriate as the development ultimately develops. In addition, as the purpose statement says in the chapter, is to encourage creativity, flexibility, and open space in the planning of developments in our variety of zones that we have here in the community. And one prime example is the Sisters Woodlands development, one of our larger acreage projects and properties. And within there are a variety of housing types, a variety of uses, and incorporation of those variety of open spaces that you get a nice layout, so you have a nice aesthetic and usable space that's for the community as a whole, but also the residents and the owners within the property. Just want to also note one of those open space components that we mentioned here is there at the bottom right corner is the public amenity. That's the Northwest Park that we've been talking about. That's city-owned, gained ownership through the master plan process or following the master plan, and working on establishing amenities and improvements for that park facility sometime here in the relatively near future. But that's a city-owned project as part of this master plan. And that flexibility, creativity, as we'll touch on, is allowing you to look at different housing options, lot sizes, uses, to provide some variety within an area instead of just a standalone monoculture, if you will, of single-family dwellings.
Matt, I have a quick question. On developments like this, does the city usually take ownership of the amenity, or does it go both ways, where the development keeps it and the HOA maintains it? Or
I've seen it both ways. I think the city took ownership of this particular acreage because it saw an opportunity to own the property, develop a city-owned park, have that ownership of what the improvements are, and also the maintenance but the investment the city can make in that. But Pine Meadow Village, that open space and the tennis courts are privately owned. They developed that as one of their amenities. Sunset Meadows has the open spaces and the trail network, so it comes in both forms.
Thanks.
So when is it required or when is it triggered? It ends up being those in the residential district properties or collection of properties in excess of 10 acres or in other zones in excess of 5 acres, or what we call major retail developments. Those are your shopping complex, the race center, where the square footage of the structure exceeds 20,000 square feet, or the site is in excess of 5 acres. Again, we're looking at those properties that are large scale that we really want to take a comprehensive look at it instead of just looking at it piecemeal. There may be those scenarios where an applicant chooses, they may not meet those minimum thresholds, but chooses to go this route because they want to see some, or have that opportunity for flexibility on the types of uses that they have in there, or some of those, that relief from some of the standards that we'll touch on later, lot sizes, setbacks, things like that.
This is why, because the 5 acres are multifamily.
Because of the 5 acre for multifamily, residential, et cetera. That's why we didn't see anything for that new 40-unit apartment complex going in over by the churches, because it's a smaller than 5 acres.
That the lot area is less than 5 acres and that it's just one multifamily residential development. So
I was wondering why we didn't see that. That answers the question.
yeah, so the multifamily as a standalone one lot development is a type 2 administrative review by staff. So, next slide. So what we're looking at as it pertains to allowed uses is what's allowed in the underlying zone. So again, we're looking for that variety of, if it's multifamily, that you have single family, the mixture of multifamily, et cetera. But also there's an opportunity to do some, go outside the box, outside of what's allowed in that chapter, and do some, this is where you look for an opportunity to be creative and allow different uses within that development area. So you may have a residentially zoned property, but there's an opportunity for a commercial node, a shopping complex that, or has some services there that, where you have the corner store to go down to within that development. While commercial is not explicitly allowed in the residential district, this provides that opportunity, upwards of 20% of the overall acreage area, but also subject to conditional uses. Oftentimes, conditional uses do come to the Planning Commission, but these are those uses that we want to look at compatibility with surrounding uses. So we don't want within a residential development a manufacturing facility right in the center of it. It may not be compatible with those residential uses nearby. Perhaps it may be, depending on the configuration, but this is where we look at compatibility, maybe establish some additional criteria to provide buffering, separation, or others, or maybe the site's not appropriate for it. And again, other factors that we may not be aware of, depending on that site-specific use.
Didn't we go through something like that recently with the school, the old school property and the clinic that they wanted to put in there that was not a...
Yeah. That was a code amendment that we did.
Okay.
So
Well, I
they
think
did.
originally was considered as a conditional use when it was originally proposed, but it was narrowed down to the scope of it, thereby allowing this.
Oh, you were talking about whether it was a conditional. I thought you were talking about whether it was part of the master plan.
Yeah, and
Which one?
It was part of that 20%, I think, because it was different than the...
I don't think it was subject to the master plan, but criteria. But I think at one time there was consideration whether it was a conditional use or a permitted use. Yeah.
Briefly calling back to Rick's question about why didn't we see the development near the churches? Is it possible for us to call those up if we want to as a type 2? I seem to recall there's a mechanism for that.
Yeah, you'll recall that the reason for the emails from in the past, Emmy, or occasionally Matt, and really occasionally myself, and soon to be Sarah, is that it's a kind of a notice of approval. It does take, I think, 2 planning commissioners to call it up to a public hearing.
Okay.
So you could, if 2 independent, hopefully independently, called it up for certain reasons that they felt like it didn't comply or we had some issue, wanted to hear it at a public hearing. I've not seen that happen, but it is an option available to the commissioner.
And then there's the variety of accessory uses that could be part of a project. If it's those, again, the examples here are laundry room, RV storage, recreational facilities, something like that. That's within development, but not a primary use, but just ancillary to as a, potentially those amenities that are required. So then we get into the development standards. So these go above and beyond what's within the zone districts, above and beyond what is required with subdivision review, and specific to developments associated and uses associated with the master plan. So first and foremost, we allow for deviation from the underlying zone standards. So minimum lot sizes set back from property lines, upwards of 20% of what those standards are. Again, it gives you some opportunity for providing a variety of product, from some variety of lot sizes to building heights, separation of structures, things like that. Gives you, again, maybe reflective of the site itself and some needs to maximize the development of the site or provide that variation. Do want to note that this does not apply to the maximum density or the density standards allowed in the district, landscaping, or the open space requirements, or the parking standards for residential use.
I was going to say that parking standards, that 20% doesn't apply across all zones, right?
Correct, yeah. It doesn't apply. Well, it could apply to, I suppose, with a commercial development, but we wouldn't be necessarily reviewing parking at the time of lot creation. So there'd be that follow-up site plan review where we'd be looking at parking associated with development. So, but the relief or absence thereof is restricted for residential uses. And moving in, as Sarah touched on, similar to subdivisions, we're looking at the street, the public works standards, the appropriate provision of street connectivity and street design, but also utilities are installed appropriately. So this is just points back to those standards that are already going to be applicable to the subdivision.
Sidewalks would fall in that area right there we're just now talking about, is that correct?
Correct.
So when we go talking about, when we start doing the amendment process, if we want to make sure we have bicycle or bike lanes and stuff, that would have to be modified. We don't have that right now in code.
Depends on the classification of the street and the location of the street. So
Oh, okay.
within those public works standards in our transportation system plan, there are a variety of street cross sections. That's the design of the street, property line to property line, whether or not sidewalks, bike lanes, curbs are installed. It depends on the location and the classification of the facility. Commercial, for example, curbs, on-street parking, sidewalks. If you're doing development in what I'll call Old Town, south of downtown, the required street improvements are what we have there. So it's not, there aren't sidewalk standards. It's kind of maintaining that aesthetic, that layout. And then last on this slide is for typical subdivision partitions, each lot shall have frontage on a street. Actual property connectivity to the street, provide individual access to the street. Within master plans, that is not required. It allows you to have your frontage along the common area, like we have at Sunset Meadows, where those lots on the south side front on the common area, but extend out to the right of way through a walkway, where the homes and the vehicle access is in the rear. So again, provides that potential for a unique housing development that you're more clustered around a common area, but not necessarily As with any multifamily development, there are design standards, articulation of the building, offsets, change in materials, etc. So just going to touch on that real quick, but that it has a design aesthetic variety of standards that can be included as part of the development. Requiring each unit or a shared laundry facility within the development. We typically see that within a single-family dwelling or as part of multifamily, that you'll have that common clubhouse / laundry facility on the site, but requires that you have it on site or as part of the development. And then, as really with any site plan or any exterior refuse area, that it be screened with a site obscuring barrier, and that it's not oriented to the street or adjacent properties, that it's more interior to the site, an aesthetic component. Next. And within any master plan, a minimum of 15% of the site shall be maintained as open space. That's where you have your landscaped areas or natural areas. There can be improvements within those open spaces, but it's limited to trail networks. It can't use your a parking area or your private streets to count towards your open space. It needs to be, but generally are those unimproved or limited improvements for that open space. Explicitly point you back to the landscape standards, where we have minimum areas that must be landscaped, and how that landscape and where that landscaping is provided, and what type of plant materials and how it's laid out, preservation of existing significant trees, things like that.
Now, wildfire standards are part of that.
Yep, there's a combination and inclusion of compliance with our defensible space standards. Yep. And last here is we require with any residential development that there's a number of amenities, that are as part of the community that provides some options, either recreational or other contemplative standards or improvements as part of the development. It does vary based on the number of units that you're creating. The more units you create, the more amenities that we're looking for. And those can come in a variety of forms. It doesn't explicitly say what they must be, but examples are trails, rec buildings, swimming pools, daycare facilities, play courts, things like that.
They can't put like four of one thing in there, can they?
We're looking for a variety. If you were to have, and that's a great question, and we haven't seen it where you have.
Courts comes to mind.
Yeah, so I'd be looking at a variety if they have them pickleball court on one side of the development, pickleball court on the other side. Are those two different?
Right.
Versus together, two courts does not make two amenities.
You
I
have-
think if you have it on either side, you may be saying that those are two different
You have the
amenities.
leeway to interpret variety now.
Yeah, and so from trail, we've seen trails, fitness, network, what do they call it? The fitness court, or what are they, where you have a variety of facilities. Well, I'm thinking of, there's
Once you go around the park and do.
Yeah, exactly. You go do some
Course,
chin-ups.
course.
And,
Oh, okay.
yeah, fitness course. Yeah, exactly. Or even, but in other developments, contemplative areas where you have a bench or a natural setting, picnic space, things like that. But full flexibility there. We're looking for some creativity. Okay, now we get into the moving, and these are more your general criteria that it meets our comprehensive plan, which is administered through our development code and land division standards, land use districts, etc., that we've already touched on. Really, the one that I want to point out is that the architectural feature standards that contemplates and enhances the positive characteristics of the site and surrounding area. What's that mean? Very subjective. I suspect that'll be touched on with our code audit, but also requires some variation along the streetscape, either with staggered street setbacks or architectural variety and interest along the street. Again, very subjective and project to project, but we look to have that complied with. And then, of course, with any commercial development, the Western Design Team. Thank you.
And there's room for an interpretation there too, I know, because when they put the bank in over by Ray's, there was a lot of discussion about whether it was really 1880s or kind of a,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, we have our guidelines in the code, and again, it can be up for interpretation, and
They're guidelines. They're
Is that unusual to have something like that, that 1880s style? Is that an unusual thing in a city?
yes, yeah. In short, and I do want to reserve time for Scott, but yeah, it's effectively a theme town.
Right.
So you have Leavenworth up in Washington has their Bavarian theme. So
Yeah, yeah.
having a citywide theme,
But built into the code like that?
yeah, I think it's rare. It's unique. And that's, I think,
Okay.
one of the things that
Okay.
makes this
Interesting.
unique.
Yeah.
It's not unique to have necessarily a theme built into your code. It may be somewhat unique to have an 1880s one, but I can think of Victorian mining towns that want to preserve that character, and so their standards dictate compliance with that. So, all right. Well, the last thing we're going to talk about is cottage development. It's something that maybe some of you are actually familiar with, because we had a couple come through at the end of 2024, the Large Commons West and the Large Commons East, along with one over at the Woodlands, and I think we have maybe one other in town up at Clear Pine. So we have some examples here in the community. I think this came about I don't know, 10 or so years ago, where we added the cottage development section to the code. And I think it was just a recognition that our kind of typical subdivisions were not necessarily serving all types of people, that we're seeing different types of households, retirees, empty nesters, single people, that necessitated the need for smaller homes on smaller lots. What's that?
It helps with density, so we don't end up with as much sprawl.
It does. Yeah. Yeah.
For example, what size, do you recall what size lot that is?
So that's an interesting one. The minimum lot size for the cottage developments are 2,000 square feet. But in this instance, they went even smaller than that, because they took advantage of one of the affordable housing provisions that we added to our code through the efficiency measures. We didn't necessarily, I think, envision that it was going to be used with cottage development, but there was nothing to prevent them from doing it. So that allowed some of those lots to go down as small as 1,400 square feet, which is great for affordable housing, really challenging for engineers to find space to put all the utilities in there. They don't like that at all, and it's a real challenge for them. It took a lot of coordination between their private engineers and our city engineer. This is Large Commons West. Yeah, so the Rambo house in the middle, that's where it's going to be eventually. So you can see, that it's designed to be more flexible and to give us some different types of housing unit types in a different kind of environment than a traditional subdivision. It is still a subdivision, but with unique standards. It does limit the maximum size of the cottage to 1,200 square feet. So it is intended to keep them small. Has unique parking requirements that are reduced to make sure that the whole site isn't taken up with parking. Parking can be on an individual lot, or it can be in a central area, in a common area. This has kind of got some common parking area in the middle. In fact, that's where all the parking is kind of a common area in the middle.
Right too, where the duplexes are.
Those are townhomes, duplexes on the right that were not subject to the cottage code, but were elements that they wanted to bring into the plan. And they have their own parking, driveway and garage there. But so everyone in the cottage units would park in those spaces off the main access way. There's a couple, there's 4 more up to the top, and then they would walk along a central pathway to get to their unit. And this also allows you to not have to have front lots onto a street, that you can get more. That allows you to get more creative. If they all had to front a street, this project probably wouldn't have happened. It gives them a lot of flexibility. So you can do them in residential districts, multifamily residential districts, the Sun Ranch residential district, and the downtown commercial, which is where the large commons went, but only where single family is allowed. There's only basically the west or eastern side of Adams Avenue is the only area in downtown that allows you to build new single family. So that's why those were allowed there. Can't do an ADU, it's already small houses on small lots, so no ADUs. You can keep an existing single family, so if you had a single family on a large parcel and you wanted to convert it into a cottage development, you could do it and still keep the single family, which is very cool. Excuse me. It is a subdivision as well, so you have to meet all the standards that Sarah laid out for us.
It's mixed use.
You could do mixed use, which is interesting. Yeah.
Commercial.
Yeah. Haven't seen that yet, but that would be truly innovative. And,
Just a
yeah,
question.
kind of corner.
That's what we need.
I was going to ask, does the City of Sisters allow ADUs on other single-family properties?
Do we allow them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You do? I haven't seen it.
Thanks, Rick. Yep. These are some other interesting standards associated with cottage development. A minimum of 4. Yeah, you can have a common area. You're required to have common area and open space, but they have to be owned by an HOA and maintained by an HOA. The open space is kind of a key component of a cottage development. If you're going to have small lots, you still need to have some kind of common area. Excuse me, some open space, and it's designed really to kind of. Usually, you see them cottage units kind of situated around a common open space. That's where you traditionally see them. So they all kind of front onto that open space, and that really creates community and is a nice amenity for. True. And then, gosh, I don't know if we want to make it to the end here. Maybe just a good reason to stop this. But anywho, there's approval criteria associated with cottage units as well, cottage developments, and these are examples of those. These also contain some kind of subjective architectural compatibility differentiation standards that we'll probably take a closer look at here. So with that ends our presentation. And are there any other questions we can entertain? We've got 2 minutes.
Are there rooms for more cottage developments you see in the future, especially with the UGB?
Oh, yeah.
In this scheme?
It seems to be a good model for affordable housing.
Yeah.
I like the ones that they built in Woodlands that we went through all back here.
Yeah.
And they turned out pretty decent looking at it,
Better than we thought.
better than I thought.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll see. I think we'll see more of those. For sure.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you all. We'll see you on February 19th, I think, is the next scheduled meeting. Plug something.
That's the crash course. We have references to the chapters. We showed you accessing the code online, so feel free to dive a little bit deeper. We're here, each one of us, available if you have any questions, brainstorms, aha moments. Please reach out. Happy to either answer those questions remotely, sit down for a little while, make sure that you feel comfortable in understanding what you got.
And one more thing. I need to correct something I said earlier. It takes 3 planning commissioners to call something up, not 2. And you have 14 days to do it. So.
Do you ever share with the planning commission, you mentioned that a lot of people are doing pre-work with you, right? Yeah, right.
Pre-application.
Do you ever share with us that process? or is that-
Typically not. People don't always want those to be public.
Oh, that makes
Yeah,
sense. Okay.
because they may not own the property yet, or
Right.
so. Right, it doesn't make sense if it doesn't go forward eventually to put that out to the public.
Okay.
Good question, though.
You seeing more of those lately or less?
Seems like it's been pretty steady, even though we haven't had the number of actual applications has gone down. Seems seems like the amount of pre-applications that we've done. I don't know what you guys think, but it seems like it's been pretty steady.
Is this a state, USA?
Thanks, Art.
Matt, you know? The decline in applications, is it just economy based?
I don't know that I've got a clear indicators or the whys, because when we have these meetings, I think there's a clear motivation and interest in moving forward, but I think it's everything from lending to cost of materials to their project timelines, general economic conditions, uncertainty, et cetera, that they may not be ready to pull the trigger on it.
I know, I'm sure it's not the sisters or, I think
It's looking at some of the growth,
Thanks.
parts of it without late in the year.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, used to be, I think Hughes County was the fastest growing county in the United States at one point. And now, everybody's going to Washington County, you know, Portland basically. So, you know, we're going back to this urbanization type thing. A lot of people are going back there, you know.
As remote work gets.
Remote.
Yeah.
We're seeing less growth, everything, and more growth in Portland. We're still staying steady, yes, but I don't think we're gonna be as bad as, you know, our trend is gonna mellow out some, I believe, if you look at those recent studies.
Thank you.
Thanks. We'll see you guys.